Hello, and welcome to myfinanceteacher.org. We're looking at Bitcoin in this video, and we are finally observing big red days on Bitcoin chart over the last week or so. And to be honest, I'm pretty happy about that. Why am I happy? Let me tell you about that. The main reason why I'm happy to see big red days on Bitcoin chart is because I've been looking for a 2-month cycle low in Bitcoin for quite a while. And what we saw in late June was a little bit too early for a cycle low. That's why I was somewhat uncomfortable to count this as a true cycle low. And as I've mentioned, I've been waiting for a cycle low to take place sometime in late July or even in August. Now let's have a look at slightly longer time frame here on this chart. That's since December last year. These are the cycles I see basically between December and June. Within those 6 months, we can see 3 cycles. So again, as it has been going on in Bitcoin for a few years already, these cycles generally last for about a couple of months. And if you measure the duration between this low we saw in early June and this other low we saw in early July, that's only about a month, even less than that. Although it is possible to have a very short cycle, it's still not very likely given the more or less exponential rise in Bitcoin price, which needed a cool down, which means the likelihood of a true cycle low to come sometime around the mark of 2 months period is only higher, which would allow the price and RSI to actually cool down. So I think over the next few days we're going to be in the process of finding that cycle low, and this period would actually be a potentially good buying opportunity. Although personally I place some small tiny amounts of money into Bitcoin every week or every couple of weeks, I might do that a little bit more frequently and with slightly larger values over the next week or so. However, please don't make a mistake that I have done many times, especially with the assets that I kind of fall in love with. You should keep your head and just try to keep your emotions out of your trading. So the mistake that I have done many times is I've caught a falling knife. I have caught a falling knife many times and I've been hurt by that. So although I think over the next several days, over the next week or two, it might be a good idea to place some longs on Bitcoin as we form this cycle low, 2-month cycle low. It might also be a good idea to wait for a green day and wait for a bounce from a clearly observable support level to indicate that the likelihood is very high that the cycle has bottomed and we're in an advancing phase of the next cycle. So with that in mind, what are these clearly observable support levels? Well, one of them, of course, is this previous cycle high, which we saw in late May. That's around $9,000. There is also a chance that this previous low that we saw in early June might turn out to be support zone. That's at about $7,500. To be honest, I'm not really sure that Bitcoin is going to drop as low as $7,500 in this cycle at least. And if it does, in that case, the technicals for Bitcoin price would not really look good, because that would mean wiping out 100% of the ascent within this current cycle. Talking about wiping out these ascents or the retracements, let's have a look at Fibonacci numbers. Yesterday, Bitcoin broke through the 62% retracement. And actually, the next Fibonacci number at 78-79% retracement aligns pretty well with the support zone at about $9,000. So that level actually has quite a high likelihood of turning out to be the true support for the upcoming cycle low in Bitcoin. Of course, nobody knows the future, and we'll have to see how it goes. And the last thing I want to point out on the daily chart is RSI is pretty far from oversold levels, so do not rush too much with your long positions. As I mentioned, don't make a mistake that I've made. Don't try to catch a falling knife. Next, let's have a look at slightly more details on the 4-hour chart. And on the 4-hour chart, we see that the 14 RSI is already into oversold territory. So we might see at least a temporary bounce up sometime soon. Let's have a look at these extension numbers for the 4-hour chart, because I think it looks kind of interesting, because the extension of the previous decline has now reached 27%. And it just means that, again, there might be at least a short-term bounce over here. If not, the next extension level would be 41%, followed by 62% extension. Within the current 4 hours, Bitcoin price has already poked through the 27% extension a little bit. So if we do go down to 41% extension, that actually also would align pretty well with that support level at about $9,000. So I think over the very short term, we might see at least a temporary bounce back towards $10,000. Whether it will be followed by lower lows, I guess we'll have to cross that bridge when we get there. Anyway, this is just sharing some of my opinion with those who will try to skim off a little bit from this short-term bounce. I know I will try to do some trading, but on a bigger picture, on the daily chart, we still see some confirmation of some support zones holding up. That is my view on Bitcoin. Share your opinion in the comments below. Hit that like button as well. Hit the bell notification. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't. And good luck in your trades.